It's time to check out another handful of low-budget and independent films that you might not have heard of. Let's start binging. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Rippy, aka The Red, aka ZOMBIROO, is new on demand and digital download from Cape Light Pictures. It's directed by Ryan Coonan and written by Richard Barcaricchio and Ryan Coonan. On the edge of the Australian outback, a small-town sheriff named Maddie, played by Tess Haubrich, tries to prove herself to be a hero like her deceased father when an 8-foot zombie kangaroo dubbed Rippy begins murdering locals and campers alike. The local pub owner, played by Angie Milliken, and her loony ex-husband, played by Michael Bain, try to help Maddie against the rampaging beast. But look out. This Roo is hoppin' mad. Yep, I went there. But this film doesn't really go for the easy puns, and instead, director Ryan Coonan, who directed Waterborne, the short this film was based on, and a hint as to how this kangaroo got so zombified and angry, plays things pretty straight. But because things are played straight doesn't mean the goofiness of a killer kangaroo on the loose isn't funny at times. The ridiculousness of the situation is highlighted quite a bit along the way as Sheriff Maddie forms a posse and sets out to track down the beast. The action moves pretty quickly, and while this is your run-of-the-mill monster run-amok film, the fact that it's a killer kangaroo and that the carnage is so gruesome makes it much better than it should be. Yes, the CG kangaroo isn't completely integrated into the scenes, but nevertheless it looks pretty ominous in the moonlight, drooling blood and showing that it's impervious to bullets. As I said, the maulings are downright goppy, so that adds to the coolness despite some lackluster CG. I kinda wish they would have gone practical with this one, as I think a kangaroo puppet in scenes might have made the beast more integrated for close-ups, though practical effects were used on the deep wounds that the monster inflicts. Props to Michael Bain for giving his all in this one as the scrappy war vet, with a few screws loose. He brings some nice gravitas and heart to this film in some key, quieter scenes. Tess Haubrich, who is a dead ringer for Jennifer Carpenter, is solid as well as the scrappy cop. And I have to mention the fun cameo by Fury Road's Nathan Jones, who has a small but memorable role. This guy needs more work. This is a short and sweet little zombie monster movie that shies away from explaining the whys behind the monster's creation and rampage until the animated end credits sequence, which is a decision that allows for the main film to cut right to the action. Rippy is not required watching, but it's a harmless and better than average monster movie due to the strong cast and straightforward tone despite its ridiculous premise. Plus, it's got a giant zombie kangaroo. I mean, who can say no to that? Black Cab is new streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Bruce Goodison and written by Virginia Gilbert. Anne, played by Synnøve Carlson, and Patrick, played by Luke Norris, are a troubled young couple. Patrick has cheated on Anne, and she knows it, and to make matters worse, Patrick has just announced their plans to wed to their friends at the dinner without even clearing it with Anne first. After the dinner, the couple get into a cab, not knowing it's being driven by a madman, played by Nick Frost. Meanwhile, the dark road the cab is driving down appears to be haunted by a legendary ghost. Black Cab is an off-kilter little thriller with a few too many cogs working overtime in the machine. It's the thriller about a mad cabbie kidnapping a couple. It's a drama between a couple destined for failure. It's a ghost story about a weeping mother who lost her child on the side of the road. Now, mixing these concepts can be a recipe for goodness, as it allows a lot of story to be played with. Unfortunately, writer Virginia Gilbert and director Bruce Goodison just don't make the three elements gel. I think the reason for this is that the core of Black Cab is a ghost story that doesn't have the legs to be a feature-length movie. The weeping hitchhiker at the side of the road is a tale as old as time. In Mexico, they have the weeping woman, La Llorona has had plenty of films made about her lately, even though most of them aren't very good. Actually, none of them are. But the ghostly hitchhiker who is constantly looking for a ride home from drivers down country roads has been covered in movies, books, anthologies, campfire tales, and probably cave paintings. This story is a shorty, a brief anecdote, and you can tell because there really isn't a lot for the ghost to do, save for supplying a few jump scares every 5 minutes or so. The ghost has no personality, and while Nick Frost's cabbie thinks he knows what she wants, her motivations are never really revealed, at least until the very end, which I'll get into in a bit. There's a whole lot of time of literally spinning wheels in Black Cab. Much of the film is simply Frost conversing with a terrified Anne, ranting about how he once gave Anne a ride to the hospital, ranting about his family, ranting about the ghost. Each rant is punctuated by the aforementioned ghost jump scare. It worked in Collateral, where a hitman, played by Tom Cruise, chats with a cab driver, played by Jamie Foxx, but let's face it, Nick Frost and Synove Carlson are just not as electrifying as Cruise and Foxx in the scenes, and the scenes Frost and Carlson share simply lack any kind of pop to carry the film. Frost is fun, he's an engaging character, and while I wouldn't call his lines hilarious, they do lend a sort of inappropriate levity to this dire situation Anne finds herself in. Frost is able to convey the emotions needed for the role, as a lot has been taken from him, and there are times the moments of levity, which most likely were ad-libs on Frost's part, take away from the dire situation. Since Anne's husband, Patrick, played by Luke Norris, is passed out for most of the movie, it's up to Synove Carlson to add to the conversation. She's a solid actress, and though the range required in this film is scared in the back of the cab to scared running from the cab, there really isn't a lot required for the role. Though there are moments Carlson fights back, I wouldn't necessarily call her role strong. There is a revelation from Carlson that occurs late in the game that might have changed everything and even stopped the story from getting too grave for everyone. And while there are subtle hints as to why Anne holds back the crucial piece of the puzzle, it's never really explained. It ends up being a major plot hole and might even turn your feelings about Anne's character once revealed. Delving deeper may get too far into spoiler territory, but the revelation occurs way too late and really causes more questions to arise than answers. While the jump scares work from time to time in Black Cab, they aren't anything we haven't seen before in the umpteenth Blumhouse flick most horror viewers have seen through the years. Writer Virginia Gilbert is responsible for a lot of English dramas, and director Bruce Goodison has been making war stories and more dramas since the late 90s, but neither have a background in horror, which might be the reason none of these scares feel relatively fresh or new. I like it that Nick Frost has had some kind of horror comeback, as he is releasing 3 horror films this year very close together. This one, last month's Crazy House, and next month's Getaway, both of which I haven't seen yet. Black Cab was a misfire for me, but I'm hoping one or both of the other 2 are worth recommending. I just can't do it for Black Cab. All You Need Is Blood is new on demand and digital download from Level 33 Entertainment. It's directed and written by Bucky Boeuf and Cooper Roberts. It's 1989, and Bucky Boeuf, played by Logan Riley Bruner, is a teen filmmaker with dreams of making epic dramas with his best friend Vish, played by Neil Sethi. Alas, their sample tapes have been rejected over and over to get into local festivals. When a new festival comes into town, run by the world-famous art house director Hans von Franz, played by Ronald Gutman, Bucky is disheartened because it has to be a horror film, and alas, Bucky pukes at the sight of blood. But when a meteor lands in their yard, Bucky's drunk father, played by Tom O'Keefe, picks it up and is infected with a zombie virus. Bucky decides to forego mourning his dead pop and uses his reanimated corpse as the central monster in his new film, an epic zombie drama. Bucky won't let his aversion to blood get in the way of stardom, so he casts a wannabe Hollywood starlet, played by Mina Suvari, hires a camera-shy wannabe actress with a taste for horror, played by Emma Chase, and dodges a detective hired to find his dead father, played by Eddie Griffin, in order to finish his movie and get it to the local film festival at all costs. All You Need Is Blood. not to be considered with the Irish folk horror flick All You Need Is Death that was released earlier in the year. This one is a lighthearted horror comedy about a boy with a dream to make movies. Since director Bucky Boeuf named his lead character after himself, it would seem that this is a highly personal film. Now, I doubt director Bucky ever had to film during a zombie outbreak, but I think a lot of the heart and trials and turbulations that occur in All You Need Is Blood serves as an accurate representation of what the filmmaker had to go through to make some of his first films. That heart is prevalent through most of the film, as character Bucky has an infectious passion that cannot be denied. As a grown kid who once dreamed of making his own films, and I'm sure there are many out there as well, this is a film that really captures that love of cinema and movie making. The cast really elevates All You Need Is Blood. While he is quite twerpy, there is something undeniably likable about Logan Riley Brunner as Bucky. It is a bit effed up that he really doesn't have much remorse over the death of his dad and other people in his life who eventually succumbed to the zombie plague, but I couldn't help but love his never say die attitude. Opposite Brunner is Emma Chase, who plays the sort of love interest for Bucky. Chase has that star power and will most likely grow to have a good long career in acting, as she has great comic timing and delivers a bold and strong character, which is quite the opposite of the nebbish Bucky. The real treat, though, is Mina Suvari, who, despite this being a low budgeter, gives it her all with a wonderfully funny and subtly complex character as a starlet in her own mind. Suvari deserves much bigger and better roles and should be applauded for helping out with an appearance in this low budgeter. The gore is mostly just spattered blood and body parts seemingly purchased from the after Halloween sale at the spirit store. At least that's the case in the first half of the film. Later the effects get amped to the max as more people get infected, and the climax involves Bucky facing off against the giant turtle, which I honestly can say I didn't predict and have never seen before. By the end of this one, anyone who is left living is dancing in a torrential downpour of blood and guts, and it's just downright infectiously fun. The film basically takes place within one house, which Bucky uses as his own film set, but because the characters are so genuinely likable, it's easy to look past the lo-fi details and just enjoy the positive movie-making vibes. All You Need Is Blood is one of those films you can't really categorize. It definitely tells the tale from a teen's perspective and has a sort of wholesome teen movie vibe to it. But it also has some vague sexual references, a lot of swearing, and a whole lot of blood. That's not exactly kids' horror, as it has more emotional heft and bloody bite to it, but I think as a preteen and teenager, I would have loved this one. It reminded me of the vibes I got from films like Explorers, The Gate, and Labyrinth. But films were made differently back in the day. Back then the kids swore and talked about sex. Blood wasn't a surefire indication of seeing an R in the rating. And while I wouldn't say All You Need Is Blood is as frightening as The Witches or even Coraline, I do think that it falls in that category of all ages horror nevertheless. Or maybe it's because the film deals with the love of film that it feels so wholesome. All I know is that I felt good after watching this one, uplifted, and yes, downright inspired by Bucky's determination to finish his movie at all costs. I feel this seems to be more of an all-ages version of One Cut of the Dead. All You Need Is Blood feels like it was made by a teenage John Waters. There's a reckless innocence to this film. It just so happens to be covered in layers and layers of blood. It's an odd little movie, and I think if you ever wanted to make a movie, even just a little bit, you'll definitely take a shine to it. Finally, let's check out an advanced review of Parvulos, aka Parents. It's directed by Isaac Ezban and written by Isaac Ezban and Ricardo Aguado-Fentanes. A trio of children, Mateo Ortega Casillas, Farid Escalante Correa, and Leonardo Cervantes, make their way across a post-apocalyptic world, defending their home from outsiders desperate to scavenge from their supplies. In the basement, they hide a dark secret. The filmmaking genius that is Isaac Ezban is not a household name, but in a true and right world, he'd be as on the tip of your tongue as Guillermo del Toro, Paco Plaza, and Alex de la Iglesia. Ezban was the twisted mind behind The Similars, a modern-day Twilight Zone epic that should not be missed by anyone who loves horror and suspense. He was also responsible for The Incident, which is another epic idea taken to horrifying levels. If you haven't seen either of these two films, I'm jealous because you get to experience these modern masterpieces for the first time. With Parvulos, Ezban dives headfirst into apocalyptic horror, but of course makes the movie unique and riveting. This being an early review, I don't want to reveal any more of the plot of Parvulos, as there are a few juicy twists that occur in the narrative of the film. But the best way to describe Parvulos is that it's a zombie apocalypse through an Amblin lens. These three kids are put through the emotional ringer for most of the film, yet Ezban manages to inject so much heart and soul into their journey. Kids in Peril tales were all the rage a while back, cashing in on the nostalgia craze, but while those films did a good job aping the look of Goonies, The Explorers, and E.T., many failed to capture the soul. Parvulos recognizes that in times of hardship, kids are affected too, but also they retain that childlike hope that often fades with age. That childlike hope, above all odds, is what Parvulos is all about. How far would you go to save a loved one? Would you give up all of your belongings? Would you scour the earth to help them? Would you kill for them? That's what Parvulos is about. At its core, represented by these three children walking the heavily forested wasteland to find some way to survive. Ezban is able to capture that incorruptible hope of a child and offers up a compelling story around it. You'll feel for these children. You'll laugh and cry and grow angry with them. This is a film that will move even the stoniest of hearts. The child actors are fantastic here. I've often said kid actors are usually a tough sell for me, as it feels like lines are being fed to them off screen because they just don't have the emotional experience to back up their performances. These three made me believe that their struggle was real and feel deeply about them to have their most unattainable dreams to come true. But Parvulos is not all doom and gloom. This is a film that is quite often laugh-out-loud funny and heartwarming as the kids try to go on with traditions like birthdays and Christmas despite their horrible situation. The film stands as a testament to the unbreakable power of a child's imagination and determined to have what was taken away from them. I laughed, I cried, I puked a little in my mouth from the gory grossness that occurs in Parvulos. This definitely isn't a movie for kids as it deals with some pretty adult themes, but man, it delivers an emotionally devastating story with characters you can't help but root for. Parvulos is currently touring the festival circuit. When it comes to a wide release, I'll be sure to let you know where and when you'll be able to see it, and you'll definitely want to. Well, there's a handful of horror made on the indie side. Which ones look interesting to you, and which ones don't? Let me know down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be. Stuck inside your reality. You're